Welcome to episode 104 of the Girl About the Globe podcast. For this episode, I'm joined by Jenny Gray of the well-known travel company Intrepid Travel. Jenny joins me to discuss women in travel and their women-only expeditions. If you've ever wanted to go on a women-only tour, this episode is for you. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Girl About the Globe, a podcast for you, the solo female traveller, empowering women to travel solo with maximum adventure, minimum impact.
Welcome to another episode of the Girl About the Globe podcast. Today I'm joined by Jenny Gray of the well-known travel company Intrepid Travel. Jenny joins me to discuss women in travel and their women-only tours. Welcome, Jenny. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here to talk about my favourite topic, absolutely.
Fantastic. And I'm really excited to talk to you about travel and especially women-only tours. But first, let's learn a little bit more about you. So you've been in travel for more than 20 years and you've lived and worked in 5 cities and across 3 countries. But where did your love of travel first begin?
Oh, that's a great question. I've been really privileged to travel from a very early age and to be exposed to travel. My dad worked for Qantas, Australia's flagship airline.
Cool.
So I think my first overseas adventure was around 3 years old. And it's strange what you remember. I recall walking through fish markets, holding my nose, as a 3-year-old dragging a toy on the ground. So that whole exposure to different cultures, different places, different sights and sounds and smells and tastes is something I've been so lucky to experience from a very young age. I grew up in Fiji. I went to an international school. My parents had a love for travel, so we traveled, and I've now married a Brazilian. So we have family all over the world, and it's part of my DNA, really. Yeah.
You've got that wanderlust in your DNA. I love it. And
absolutely.
So now you're a senior product manager for Intrepid, and you've obviously designed and managed trips across many countries. I read that you also did that specifically in Africa and the Middle East. So those areas are obviously, well, I'm living in the Middle East now, but Africa especially can be quite volatile and things can change very quickly there. And I know that you were there and you had challenges with Ebola, terrorist attacks, an outbreak of the plague. I'm guessing that made you more resilient, but did that ever put you off your love of traveling as well?
That's a great question. Essentially, the short answer is no. I feel very lucky to have managed Africa and the Middle East for Intrepid Travel for as long as I've been with the business. And it's just, it's a huge part of the world, but it's an incredible part of the world. It's so diverse, as you would know, diverse and incredibly rich with culture and wildlife and history and religion and food. We certainly have been through our fair share of unexpected incidents and external factors while I've been managing the region. My mantra very quickly became control the controllables. It was challenging at times, but I've learned so much. And it's only every time we faced a different incident or challenge, external challenge, it only inspired me to get people back traveling there as soon as we feasibly could, because I just wanted people to not miss out on experiencing these incredible parts of the world and the things they have to offer, really.
Yeah, like you say, it's such an interesting region, isn't it? Especially Africa. I've been to West Africa a couple of times, and each time on my trip, something has come up and it's gone a bit wrong, or we've had to take a detour, but it hasn't put me off, and it's actually made me more determined to go back and visit the countries that I've missed out at a later date as well. And things change all the time, don't they? Like countries, I used to live in Medellin in Colombia, and that used to be one of the most dangerous cities in the world. And now it's welcoming tourists with open arms. So things can change in just a matter of years or months, can't they?
Absolutely. That's such a great example. It's so true. And I think as well, often the unexpected, provided it's not too extreme, the unexpected on our travels, they're the stories that we often come home telling everybody about, that stay with us until we're old and wrinkly, because they're the unexpected, the unknown, the I always think of Iran as a classic example of that, where perception of a destination is often quite off compass to what the reality is on the ground. And I think that's really special for travellers. And I think travellers now are seeking out those destinations that they don't know so much about.
Exactly. What do you think women's main concerns are about traveling to the more emerging destinations and getting off the mainstream route?
I think in general, all travellers, first and foremost, want to make sure that where they're travelling to, they're aware of the realities of traveling in that destination, the things that they need to know to make informed decisions about keeping themselves safe, whether that be from the really standard things like, drinking water and what can I eat, or but where can I go? And then I think on a more personal level, the cultural norms as well. None of us want to travel somewhere and offend the people that we're meeting and having a chance to connect with. So I think that's also a really important piece. So understanding, what's appropriate and what's not. Where can we go? What can we eat? Is this tried and tested? Am I traveling with a local who knows these things and who has those connections on the ground with people? I think all of those things are quite important to travelers and women in particular. The reality is, we both know there are things that we need to consider when traveling that men don't.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What I really love is that you founded women's expeditions for Intrepid. Can you tell me more about them and why you decided to create women-only tours?
Absolutely. So I was obviously managing trips within Africa and the Middle East at the time, and I'd either directly managed the trips myself or managed the team that managed the trips. So I had a connection to them. And this concept of women-led, women-only trips, it was by no means a new one. There was people in the industry doing it, but we knew that there was this really exciting opportunity to create these female-only trips that opened up destinations and experiences that were off limits to mixed gender groups. It was something that came up in our travellers' feedback continuously for the Middle East region in particular. And as you would know, each country comes with its own unique cultural and religious factors, which sometimes made that local interaction, which Intrepid Trips is really fundamentally intrepid, it made it challenging and complex for some of our mixed gender groups. And we were really hearing from our travellers that they wanted more of those opportunities. We wanted female travellers to have that opportunity to connect with women from all around the world and offer that really unique insight into their everyday lives, their challenges. And then, just equally important, we wanted to ensure that these trips would share those important stories of female empowerment and directly benefit women on the ground. So it was kind of a twofold approach, and it came about through a number of reasons. There was, for me personally, I had an experience in a female-only salon in Iran, and again, as I mentioned, it was one of those countries that I didn't know a lot about before I travelled there, and I definitely had a lot of misconceptions. And I'm quite embarrassed to say I didn't realise that the large part of our leader team on the ground were largely female, highly educated. Most of them have 1, if not 2 degrees. They drive their own cars. They do yoga and they keep up with the fashion, and they were incredibly vivacious, independent, strong-minded women. And so I had this incredible experience at a female-only salon with a couple of our leaders, and we went down under this building that I would have never found on my own. The hijabs came off and the jackets came off, and the conversation was lively. There was American pop music, there was bright red lipstick, there was, purple nails, and it was just I couldn't understand where that was happening because it was all in
Yeah.
Farsi, but I just, the smiles and the laughter and the warmth and the authenticity it was just one of those moments that I will remember forever. And I thought to myself, wow, this is Iran. These Iranian women we could be anywhere in the world. They could be your sister or your mother or your cousin or your girlfriend. And I thought, I wish that all of our travelers could experience this. And I thought, well, they can't because, this is a female-only salon. And that's where it really it was born. We thought, well, hang on, there's an opportunity here. And we recognize that all Intrepid trips are designed for everyone to have the opportunity to get under the skin of a destination. But we really felt like there was this opportunity where there was destinations and experiences that, were only really open to women. And we didn't want to not pursue that opportunity either.
Oh, I love that. And that's what I love about travel as well, is that you really get to know the people when you travel, especially when you go to emerging countries. That's why I love going to countries that not a lot of people have traveled to, because I really feel as though you get a chance to get under the skin of a country and really learn more about the local people. And travel can really change your perception of a country that you're only really fed from the media or other people who may have traveled there but had a completely different experience. So I think also when you travel and you're very open to meeting others and learning and knowing about the cultural norms before you go, you can also have such a more enriching experience. And maybe that also is the difference between what women look for as opposed to possibly what men look for when they travel. Obviously, I can't speak for men, but I think there does seem to be a trend in women looking for more immersive, authentic cultural trips.
Absolutely, I would definitely agree with that, particularly in a post-pandemic environment. I mean, so many of us were shut off from that, face-to-face connection, the opportunity to connect with people, to learn more about them and have those experiences. So more than ever, I feel people are really seeking those out, and there's genuine opportunities as well.
And you also conducted a survey, didn't you? The Harris poll. I think 82% of women said that they wished that there were more authentic travel experiences that connect them to local culture. So it really seems as though the tools that you've created are filling that gap and that need.
Definitely, we weren't surprised by those findings. It really just cemented what we already had, the sentiments that we felt were coming through in the feedback from our customers and the demands from them as well. So, yeah, it reflects the common sentiment.
And I know that you conducted the survey which revealed that women want more equity when it comes to travel. Why did you feel the need to conduct the survey? And what were some of the most surprising findings from that?
Yeah, so the survey was conducted on behalf of Intrepid Travel earlier this year, and the sampling was a mixture of men and women, and we wanted to get a feel of that sentiment, how important it was for people for equity in travel as well. What we found was, 4 in 5 women between the ages of 18 to 34 felt that the travel industry should market towards women more. Not as many men felt the same way. 75% of young women thought that there needs to be more equity in travel as well. And again, largely swayed between the sentiments in comparison to the sentiments of men. And 88% of women thought that travel companies should ensure the experiences they offer have a positive impact on the local communities of their destination. And that's something that's really ingrained in the way that we operate our trips around the world. As the world's largest travel B Corp, it's inherently built into the way that we design trips, to the way that we operate our business all across the world as well.
Oh, fantastic. I've personally traveled to some of the countries that you have the women's groups for, so Morocco, India, and Jordan. It is doable independently, but I would probably join a tour next time I went, because I do feel that you can have a much more comfortable time if you go with a local guide. And those areas can be quite tricky to navigate if you're by yourself as well, and especially if you're a bit of a first time solo or you haven't traveled that much before, they can be quite a culture shock. So I'm really interested in your Pakistan trip. I think that just sounds fantastic, because that's a country that I also would love to travel to, but that is one of the ones that I do feel a little bit intrepid about. Using the same word as your travel company, I do feel a bit nervous about traveling to by myself because of all the different things that I've heard. So I'm really happy to see that you have a Pakistan trip.
Definitely, I agree. It's one of those destinations that people can't stop talking about at the moment. And in terms of our women's range of trips, it's getting a lot of interest. I believe it's because of some of the reasons that you've just spoken to. Even the most well-traveled people don't know a lot about Pakistan. And
Mm.
I haven't been to Pakistan, but I relate it very closely to Iran. There's so many similarities. It's clouded by a poor reputation. Most people know very, very little about the destination, but there's incredible landscapes and hospitality, amazing food. It's ethnically diverse, great trekking, rich with ancient history. I think Pakistan, much like Iran, it comes as a surprise to travelers, pure and simple, because it's not what they expect. And there's no bigger thrill for a traveler than that. And I think that really is part of the reason why people are so genuinely curious and excited by it. And the fact that they can to go on a tour that's been designed specifically by women for women and is guided by local women, that's incredibly appealing in a destination like that where we know a lot of people know very little about.
Definitely. And how do you go about creating these trips? Do you just go to the country and do you look for the female-only salons? Because I know you include one of them also in your Pakistan trip, and you also mentioned one in Iran as well. So do you look for local projects or women-only businesses in that country and then just put together the destinations that you would like to travel to that are quite cultural? How do you go about creating something like that for women?
That's a really great question. Sometimes the trip idea starts from one of those incredible experiences, like the Iran one, as a good example. And sometimes it's the other way around. So we've either identified an incredible opportunity or a gap or a destination we believe that it will be popular for women only tours. In particular, one of the things that's core to these trips and which makes us a little bit different from our competitors is that we don't just take standard itineraries and say that they're for women only. We genuinely build in those experiences that are for cultural or religious reasons or in order to operate a trip in a sensitive manner. That's why they're genuinely women's only. So we try and intertwine those experiences into the trip when we're designing them and building them. We have incredible local operators on the ground. We have experienced leaders. We have our own Intrepid DMC network around the world. And we really rely on their local knowledge and input to help us design these itineraries. So we're not just doing them from a remote office on the other side of the world based on, desk-based research. It's very much a collaboration. Often they will have local communities or not-for-profit organisations that we've been introduced to or we've sought out either way. And we really work to ensure that our trips are supporting female-only operated and owned businesses on the ground. So there's a little bit of everything that goes into it, to be honest. And sometimes originates from head office. Sometimes it originates on the ground. It's a little bit of both, really.
That's fantastic. I love the fact that you're not just taking a normal standard itinerary that you've got that I know other travel companies do and then just do them as women only, and that you're actually tailor making it specifically for women. I really love that. And I love the fact that you initially launched them on International Women's Day. So that was 5 years ago?
Yes, that's right. So we originally launched on International Women's Day 2018, our first round, and we launched in Morocco, Jordan, and Iran. We were completely blown away by the incredible response we had from across the wider business, our customers, travel agents, media. Within 7 months, we'd grown from 4 to 36 departures. We saw
Wow.
huge growth, and the range was so successful that by 2020, we were planning 62 departures on 9 different itineraries from Nepal to Morocco.
That is
Unfortunately, yeah, it
amazing.
was fantastic. It was really nice to see. Often working in product and in travel, sometimes you can have ideas that you think people will really enjoy and they'll take off, and sometimes they don't. So it was fantastic to see the positive sentiments and feedback on the trips, and the first few departures were 5 out of 5. So it really reconfirmed that we're in the right place doing the right thing. And then for me on a personal level, and the reason that I throw my heart into these trips, they're my passion project. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning is because the success of these trips is so much bigger than that. They've played a really important role in a much larger gender equality story as well. So often I'll get asked, what do travelers gain from traveling on one of these trips? What benefits are there traveling in a women-only tour? And yes, female travelers have these incredible, unique opportunities to connect with local women. But more importantly, it has this profound impact on our female leaders, our suppliers, and the local women on the ground. And at its most basic level, it gives them an opportunity to tell their story and to talk about their personal and collective struggles and triumphs in achieving gender equality. But beyond that, it provides really significant employment opportunities as well. It's essentially a ripple effect. We know not just anecdotally but statistically speaking, empowered women empower other women, and that happens at home, it happens at school, it happens in their wider communities. So it's incredible to see. It's really incredible to see the impact.
That is so true. I love what you just said, especially about the women's empowerment. Yeah, when you were talking, I was actually thinking that it's not just only helping women's empowerment in the countries that you're traveling to, but it's also helping women be in a group of other women, because then I think their self-worth and self-esteem grows, and they realize the potential, and they grow in confidence, and they're empowering each other. So it's just creating a ripple effect. So I just think it's amazing. And I started blogging 10 years ago, even though I've been traveling about 25 years. And in that time, I've just seen women travel as an industry has just exploded, and especially over 50 women as well, who I think would be quite nervous about traveling alone if they've never done it before, if they were married and now they're deciding to travel. So I think just in general, women's empowerment it's really growing, and it is creating a ripple effect, and it's just such a wonderful thing to see.
It is. It is. I can't wait to see where we're at in another 10 years' time, just in general, not even specifically on these tours. And as a business as well, we hope that others see what we're doing, and we hope that other people will replicate it. And, the more of us empowering women and the more of us supporting these female-owned businesses, providing important employment opportunities, again, it's just more of that ripple effect. So,
yeah, exactly. And incidentally, last month, March 2023, was actually Women's History Month, wasn't it? And can you share what that means to you?
Women's History Month is definitely a great opportunity to elevate women's voices, to share those stories of success and challenge, and to recognise their contributions. But to me, this really needs to be an everyday thing. It's the same with International Women's Day. It's a great time and way to elevate those stories, but it needs to be an everyday thing, not a once a month, 1 month or one day of the year, in my opinion.
So true. And something else that Intrepid really focuses on as well is sustainable travel. And I know you explained earlier about the trips, they help to rebuild and support local communities as well. So I love the fact that you're focusing on sustainable travel and conscious travel.
Yeah, we're not just looking inward. So as we look towards our next B Corp certification, we make sure that we advance gender equality by working with women-owned businesses in our supply chain. We're a signatory on the UN Global Compact's Women's Empowerment Principles since 2017. We produced a global pay equity report in 2022. And one of the goals that I talk a lot about, and it really pulls on the heartstrings. In 2017, we set a pretty ambitious goal to double the number of female leaders we have around the world by 2020. And this is probably not a difficult target to achieve in many countries, but when you look at those more traditional societies like India and Morocco, recruiting women is a much greater challenge. We actually ended up meeting that goal of doubling the number of female tour leaders well ahead of target in 2019.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And as of 2023, we have about 275 female leaders around the world, and crew as well. And as you know, that includes in some places entire trekking teams, porters and assistant guides and guides who are just trekking guides who are, climbing mountains and smashing glass ceilings.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. Definitely, I won't take credit for it. It's the work of our amazing DMCs around the world. But I'm very proud of the work they've done.
Yeah. Do you have any plans for any future trips? I recently went to, not yourself personally, and also Intrepid for women's only trips. I personally went to Saudi Arabia in December for a few days, had a local guide for a desert trip for a day. And he was telling me that it's very unusual to get local guides there. And because they're quite relatively new to tourism, there aren't any women's guides at the moment, but hopefully that will change in the future. So do you have any plans to go to Saudi or venture out into any other emerging destinations?
I'm fascinated by your experience, and I could spend a whole another hour or two talking to you about that quite personally. It's again one of those destinations that intrigues and a lot of us, doesn't it? It's particularly the fact that it's just really opened up for tourism. Yeah. In terms of the range, we absolutely are looking to grow the number of destinations. We are rebuilding the range after a little bit of a lull during the pandemic. So we're back to 6 destinations this year, and there's already itineraries that we're working on right now in destinations, for new destinations and reinstated destinations. We don't have any immediate plans to operate in Saudi Arabia at this point in time. Not to say that that wouldn't change, but at this point in time, we don't.
It's interesting because when I was watching the World Cup, Saudi Arabia was doing a really big tourism drive at the time. And I think
Mm.
parts of Saudi, say Alua, I think it's called, is apparently really geared up for tourism. But
Mhm.
in other areas, it does feel like they have got quite a long way to go before they can accept international English-speaking tourists, from my personal experience. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes in the future as well. But I also heard that Sudan's now becoming a little bit more popular and people are a bit more intrigued with Sudan. Have you personally been to Sudan?
It's not a destination I've been to. I have managed a trip that we previously had an expedition trip pre-pandemic in Sudan, and the itinerary just looked incredibly fascinating to me. Really, bringing together the rich history and ancient history of similar to Egypt, but
Yeah.
some of those African influences as well. I think it would be an incredible place to travel to. We don't currently have that itinerary in operation, but again, we're really, travel is back. We're rebuilding, we're expanding our portfolios, so we'll see.
And I love the places that you go to. As I mentioned before with Morocco, but I do have a Facebook community of women from all over the world, and Morocco does get posted in there quite often, and women are a little bit nervous about traveling there by themselves. So it's great that you do have a tour there, because especially in Marrakesh itself, you can get quite hassled. So it's really nice to avoid all of that and actually go with a tour and meet other women traveling with the same mindset as well. So I really love all the countries that you offer the women's only tours in. But as for you personally, what are your future plans in regards to travel? Is there a destination that you haven't been to yet that you really want to go to?
Oh, that's the blessing and the curse of working in travel. The list gets longer every time you speak to
Yeah.
someone. um, I would love to get to Pakistan. I am biased, obviously, having been working on and launching these itineraries with our incredible teams on the ground recently. Nepal is at the top of my list right now. Um, Reading and learning about the female porters in Nepal has really inspired me. It's not the norm. The trekking industry
No.
there is very much male dominated. Women are generally considered to not be strong enough or not fast enough. But these women are incredible. As I said, they're climbing mountains and they're smashing glass ceilings with packs on their back. And some of them, one of our porters is studying microbiology while she does that as well, which is just
Mind blowing, isn't it?
mind blowing to me as well. So I'm middle aged now. I came back from maternity leave about exactly a year ago, and I'm definitely looking for my next solo female trip to re-inspire myself and re-energize myself. And I think this trip it's just caught my attention, and I don't think I need to get out of my system. I need to get into those incredible mountains and trek alongside these incredible women.
So you're definitely an adventure traveller.
I think I'm a little bit of everything, to be honest. I don't mind a nice, comfortable hotel, and I love a beach, but I like a little bit of everything, to be honest.
What's one of the most surprising countries that you've ever been to?
I always go back to Iran. I've been there twice, and
Oh,
it's certainly, and I tell people a funny story of when I first traveled to Iran, and I knew that I needed to have a headscarf, obviously, to wear a hijab, and I arrived there, and I remember I had a red headscarf, and I went down to breakfast, and I was in a hotel, and it was a business hotel, so it was before I joined an Intrepid trip. It was an Intrepid hotel. um, and I felt like I was completely out of place, because I thought, all of these women here are much older and they're wearing black and blue, and I'm wearing red. And is this the equivalent of like wearing fishnet stockings instead of, instead
yeah.
of woolen leggings? Like, what have I done? I feel so silly. So I rushed out to try and buy a new headscarf. And the next morning, my leader turned up to take me out on a walking tour, and she had a bright, colorful, beautiful headscarf pushed back on her head with red lipstick and the most incredible outfit in all of the colors that you could imagine. And she was just stunning. And I thought, wow, I had it so wrong. It just so happened that I was sitting with, a bunch of middle-aged women in a restaurant, which could happen anywhere in the world. And I completely had the wrong perspective, and, went on to learn that she also had 2 degrees, one of them in microbiology also. And we got into her car and she drove me here and she drove me there. And she told me about her gym and how she was going to go home and watch Friends that night, and how she wanted to marry, a Dutch man with an Italian body who also was a pilot. And I just, it was just, that country is just full of surprises, and it breaks my heart to see the challenges and the things that are happening over there at the moment, because the people are so genuine and kind and open, and not what we think.
It's awful, isn't it? I heard that Iranians are the friendliest people that you will ever come across, and that the hospitality is in their DNA, and they invite you in for dinner and for drinks, and they show you around, and that they're just really giving people. And I did actually meet a lady when I was staying in a hostel in Georgia, and she was from Iran, and she gave me her number, and she said, if you ever want to come to the country, then take my number and you can come and you can stay at my place and I'll show you around. And I thought, wow, this is lovely. I'm not used to this. So I'd really love to go to Iran at some point, and I really hope that the situation changes there.
Me too, absolutely. I think it's one of those places, if everybody could get there, I think you'd come back a better person, to be honest, with definitely a better view on the world and people, for sure. And I just loved it. Love the people.
Oh, fantastic. And just to round up, what do you think is the future for women in travel? I love what you said about the fact that there are now women porters in Nepal, and women's empowerment hopefully is growing as well. But what do you think is the future for women in travel?
Oh, it's such a loaded question.
Yeah.
I think things are changing. They're moving in the right direction. And as we talked about before, I can't wait to see where we are in 10 years' time. I think it will be a different playing field. I feel that things are not just changing on the ground for women, but businesses are understanding the role and the impact that they can play as well in changing the world for a better place and having this ripple effect on communities around the world. I believe it's only going to gain momentum, perhaps faster in some places, slower in others, but it's certainly moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. And so where can people go to find out more about the Intrepid Women's Expeditions?
If anyone wants to learn more about our women's expeditions, you can jump onto the Intrepid Travel website, and at the top we have a menu called Ways to Travel, and you'll find a whole landing page on our women's expeditions, where we travel, blog stories from women who have travelled in different destinations on these trips, more about our gender equality mission as well, lots of frequently asked questions.
Thank you for joining me today, Jenny, and I wish both you personally and Intrepid every success in the future. And here's to more women empowerment around the world.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's been so lovely chatting to you about these trips, and I hope to see you on the road on one of them one day.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. And you can find all of Intrepid's tours on the destination guides on the Girl About the Globe blog. That's it from me, and I'll see you again back here next week.
Thanks for listening to our Girl About the Globe podcast, making solo travel easier for you. Find everything that you need for your solo travels at girlabouttheglobe.com, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.